Hey, Southeast Missouri sports fans. Enjoy the show and want to take it on the go? You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. Tune in as they air by searching SEMO Sports Zone wherever you may be listening. Welcome to the SEMO Sports Zone presented by A-Corp Sports. Today you are listening to this on, checks my phone, Thursday, January 30th. Dave, how are we doing today?
Doing just fine. Still healthy. That's good. I like being healthy because it's still going around. School's still getting canceled. There's it's going around, and I'm just happy to be healthy right now.
Yeah, me too. After getting over what I was sick with, I feel for everybody out there who's still dealing with it. You'd think it would burn out after a week or two, but hey, still school's getting canceled, still games getting canceled, and
yeah, it's running rampant, and that's just let's everybody stay in. If you feel a little bit under the weather, stay in so you don't spread this thing. Yeah,
just to start talking about it, Stoddard County tournament's going on right now.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder, I know there's been a lot of kids out at Dexter and things, and you wonder if they, I guess there's that threshold that if you hit that certain mark, you may have to cancel. That's usually kind of the mark to where you cancel school. And if that were to happen, what would happen to the tournament? I have no idea. I don't know. I don't even know if that's even an option that they're even considering or anything at this point. But and you have other teams. I know that Woodland canceled their girls' game on Wednesday.
Campbell's just canceled their game. Campbell was supposed to go on tonight.
Yeah, Campbell's canceled. As far as the tournament goes, so if Woodland does Woodland forfeit if the tournament's still going on? Do they postpone?
Does Dexter forfeit?
Yeah, does Dexter
what's that mean for the entire tournament at that point?
And I don't even know about these other teams. Do they have issues as well? I know that Richland's got a little bit going around, mm-hmm. I think it'd be hard pressed for a school not to have it going around at this point. So, hopefully everybody's healthy enough that they can play and we can get this tournament, the Stoddard County tournament over. But at the same time, it's almost like a war of attrition at this point. Whose team can stay the healthiest as you get through here?
Yeah, and it makes me wonder too, because I've had some thoughts about some of the games that we've seen, and for the most part, they've kind of gone the way we thought they would, but at the same time, I don't know how to put asterisks on some of them because just like, well, who's sick, who's not, what are they dealing with?
Yeah, I know, and I'm the same way, and you just don't know what these kids are. I remember when I was in school. Sometimes you would, if you really wanted to do something, you might not tell them you're not mm-hmm. feeling well, and you're still going out and doing that, but you're not, anywhere near 100%. So I don't know. It does bring a lot of there's a couple of games that come to my mind that I was like just kind of surprised by the way the game played out, and it's like, well, I wonder if that had anything to do with it, but you don't know, and it's just a tough situation for this area right now.
Yeah, well, hey, hope for the best. I hope this tournament finishes out if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have there's nothing. Nobody's told me, hey, they're thinking about canceling this tournament. I've not heard that. I'm just like wondering what happens if Dexter School, if they hit that threshold or whatever, and what happens since they're the host. Maybe nothing, but I don't think there's any rule that says you have to cancel the tournament or whatever.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the games that we saw Monday and Tuesday. I think a good synopsis for this week has been the good teams are good, and they know they're good, and their scores reflect that.
Yeah, for the most part, it's been just kind of what we thought. Teams just taking care of business, kind of like football season. Got about midway through football season, and the teams we thought were good were just kind of taking care of their business. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of got that in basketball. There's not a lot of not a lot of surprises out there. And, you just kind of, it is kind of what we thought it would be.
Yeah. Especially on Monday, pretty much everything I've got listed down. I haven't listed every game that happened in the area, but all the ones that I did were pretty much decisive wins. First one I've got listed down is Perryville at East Prairie, ended that game 62-94.
Yeah, Perryville. They came down. Their Coach Hahn likes to run, get up and down the floor, and that just plays right into East Prairie's hands. Yeah. Have fun with that. And East Prairie just ran him out of the gym.
And from what I heard, Noah Johnson just did exactly what he needed to. Played cleanup.
There was just a great performance from him, and just a great performance from that whole team, and that's a team that just plays right into East Prairie's hand.
Moving on, I've got South Pemiscot at Porterville, 74-47.
And South Pemiscot, again, just taking care of business, going down to Portersville and just, they're a better team, and they showed it. And, that's kind of what we expected to see a little bit from South Pem what they've done this week is kind of put some more points up, had a little bit, been a little bit better offensively, and they were in that game for sure.
And then finally, for regular season games on Monday, I've got Clearwater at Neelyville. I just want to mention this because Neelyville's in that Class 2 District 1. Finished that game, Neelyville 93 over Clearwater 37.
Yeah, so Neelyville is 7-10. Then I think they were at one point 1-10 or 2-10, something like that. So they've got a pretty good win streak going, and they're second place in the Ozark Foothills Conference with a 5-1 conference record. So only behind Puxico, who's undefeated. Their first year in the conference. So yeah, I mean, you look at Neelyville, and Neelyville had a tough start, played a lot of tough teams, and now it's paying off because they're rolling right now. Yeah,
I think we said it at the start of the season too that they were the best 1-5 team at that moment, and to be where they're at right now, great improvement. And if you're just looking from standings wise, but obviously they stack the beginning of their season with the toughest games possible just so they get to this point.
Yeah, I mean it was unfortunate that some of those teams they were matched up against and they played games close. They just weren't able to pull them out. And but now they've got things figured out there, and they're kind of rolling.
And obviously once postseason comes around, they're going to have to deal with South Pem and Hayti and teams like that, and that's going to be something to deal with.
But again, that's a tough district, and they're going to be used to playing some tough games. That's for sure.
Well, let's talk about Stoddard County at this point. So Monday night for varsity, we had Advance versus Puxico. Ended that game 39-74.
Yeah, Puxico rolled. I think we expected that. I don't think there was nothing I saw in that game that was a surprise. Puxico just kind of rolled, did their thing, and moving on, and just took care of their business.
Yeah, I mean, standout. I mean, Burchard just did what Burchard does. He pretty much he could do whatever he wanted to on the court at that point.
Yeah, they had no answer for him, and most teams don't. So, there was some talk that maybe he was a little under the weather whenever they played Dexter, and he certainly was not under the weather against Advance because he looked good.
No, he seemed completely back in form. Didn't seem like he missed a step the entire game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's talk about the surprising game from Monday night, Dexter versus Richland. I was wrong because I thought Richland had this game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like saying this, but Richland just didn't show up, and I don't want to take anything away. Dexter played really well. They had a lot of energy. They looked like they did in the Bloomfield Christmas tournament. They were getting to the rim. They didn't just settle for just shooting all threes. They were real active. They were moving without the ball. I mean, they just looked ready to play. And I think with Richland playing well, I think Dexter probably still would have won that game playing the way they did. Richland just didn't show up, though. I mean, that's just one of those games where, you have each team has a few of those every year, and that was just a inopportune time for Richland just to kind of no show, and it's tough, but I hate saying it, but that's just kind of what it looked like.
Yeah, and I mean, consensus among me and my colleagues was basically, hey, that first game that Dexter played against Richland at Richland must have played out of their minds because this game it just wasn't there.
Yeah, I don't know. Dexter got to every loose ball. I mean, it looked like the Richland and maybe, we talk about the sickness. Maybe there was some sickness. I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody, but maybe there was. But I mean, Dexter would get the ball out on the 3-point line and just drive right past them, and they would just sit there and watch them go to the rim. I mean, it was like they weren't even giving much effort there, and that's not typically what you see out of the Richland team, and just not. And again, each team has a few of those games every year, but it was kind of there was a definite difference. Dexter was getting to every loose ball and just played with so much energy, and Richland just didn't. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully there was some sickness or something going around, but it's just not. I mean, just not what you want to see if you're Coach Klein. And I know he was frustrated just by seeing him on the sideline. He looked frustrated. So, hopefully they get back on the track here. We record this on Wednesday. They're playing Wednesday, so hopefully they get back and get that fixed for their game against Advance.
Yeah, and I mean, to talk about Dexter a little bit, just in that game, I mean, Elijah Ibrahim probably had his best game of the season.
Yeah.
I think he had 16 points. I want to say 8 rebounds, something like that. Maybe I don't have that stat right in front of me, but that's just my guess. And, John Spavital, 20 points on the night. He looked great. What I think the difference was, especially they locked down Tilly immediately. Mm-hmm. And
they did.
For the entire game. Like, he just had no ability to get that 20 points that he's used to getting. And then as far as, like, the second half, Richland's defense just wasn't there. Like, Dexter could just do whatever they wanted to at that point.
Yeah, and it looked like Dexter kind of ran like a triangle and 2 or a box and 1 or something on, in that game. And you're right. Second half, Dexter did everything they wanted. And it was just like Richland was just like, hey, for me, I believe it was right at the end of the first half when Sepulvedo just grabbed the ball and just drove right past everybody. And they just watched him go right to the rim for an easy layup right as the buzzer went off. I mean, it was just like, what are we doing here? And it was just kind of a surprising it doesn't surprise me that Dexter won, but the margin for sure. And that game in the second half was completely dominated by Dexter. And it's amazing too. I talked in the last pod about, what happens when, they missed so many easy point blank shots. They didn't miss those. They made those. And that's a huge difference when you can make those.
But I think the difference is they didn't have the pressure that they're usually dealing with from other teams. Like I said, there's no defense in that Richland didn't bring it that whole second half. Yeah. So Dexter could make those easy shots. Maybe that's a good wake up call. It's like, okay, focus on your fundamentals for, driving to the basket at this point, because if Dexter plays like that every game, they're going to be
tough to beat. Yeah. And I love them only shooting. I think they only shot like 11 or 12 threes.
Something like that, yeah.
So, I love that. Get to the rim, and you can't do that against everybody. Like, you're not going to be able to do that against Sykeston. You're not going to be able to do that against, Cape Centrals and stuff like that. But you can do that in the Stoddard County Conference. And hopefully this carries over to that Puxico game, because I'd love to see another game that was similar to the Christmas tournament where they go down to the wire. And I think this Dexter team is capable of doing that.
Only other thing I have kind of just an opinion on Richland is, out of conference, they do really good. Mm-hmm. But something about playing against Stoddard County teams, they're just not there right now.
Yeah, they'd won 3 of the last 4 against Dexter, but just for some reason, something there that just – and it's strange, sometimes you see a player here, a player there that does not have it that night. But it was just the entire team. It just didn't seemed out of sync.
Just seemed off.
Yeah, and just a tough night to do it. And into the losers bracket they go.
All right. Well, let's talk about some Tuesday games. Once again, this is pretty much just kind of like the teams that were rolling are rolling. You don't know how much sickness affects that, but it is what it is. I've got Cooter at South Pemiscot, 48-91.
Yeah, again, South Pem finding some offense, got 91. I mean, Cooter's not a terrible team, and South Pem just kind of put it on them. And finding that offense, I think, is something that kind of we've been waiting for, and they've kind of done that these last 2 games.
Which at this point, that's just what we expect out of South Pem, like you said. Moving on, I got Porterville at Hayti, 32-73.
Yeah, and Haytie's another team, just turned it on, took care of business. Portersville, that's a tough 1-2 start to the week.
That's really tough.
And they took it on the chin twice, and tough for them. But Haytie's a good team. Hayti, another team that's going to get up and down the floor. It looked like Portersville was able to slow them down a little bit as to what they like to play, but it wasn't enough. And Haytie's just going to get out and run on you. And that's just a really nice team. I mean, that's a tough Boot Hill Conference. You got Campbell, Crothersville, and Hayti, all with just one conference loss. South Pem's got 2. I mean, that's a pretty good 1 through 4 in your Boot Hill Conference.
Yeah, and I feel bad for these teams that are kind of in this rebuild phase that some of them might be in, just because of that, where it's like you're dealing with 4 top dogs and a 5th that's not too far behind anybody either.
Yeah, poor Zenith. I'm like, Zenith, they're not a bad team, and they're playing these games fairly close. They just can't win one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sorry. I think they're 2-4 in conference, but but those are 4 tough losses they've had. I mean, and they were in pretty much every one of them.
Right. And just to talk about it, Zenith Hornsville at Campbell, 53-63.
Yeah, and again, they played Campbell twice this year, and I think they've lost by 10 both times. I mean, it's just they can play with them, they just can't get over that hump and get that win against one of these good teams. And Campbell's just rolling right now. They're loaded with they've got 5 guys, a couple of seniors, but 3 juniors that are just really good players, and they're just rolling at this point.
And obviously, we're going to see them in the Boot Hill Conference tournament, but at the same time, what do you think Campbell's aspirations are for postseason at this point?
Well, I think they've got to be looking like they can win a district title. I mean, why would you not at this point? I mean, it's not going to be easy. I mean,
Absolutely not.
That's going to be a brutal district.
Yeah, same question for every one of these teams at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brutal district, but any of those teams have a chance to get out of that district. So, and then have a chance to make a run once they do. So, yeah, I mean, they've got just as good a chance as anybody else. I mean, I would think that they would probably be one of the top seeds in that, depending on how the conference tournament plays out and the rest of the season. But I mean, they're 15-2. They've only got 2 losses. Haytie's won, and they're the only one from in-state. I think the other one's from Overton. I think that was in the Riverbend. So, I mean, they're not. I mean, like, it's going to be hard for them probably not to be the top seed at this point if they continue on this pace.
Exactly. Moving on, Malden at New Madrid County Central ended that game 49-60.
Yeah, it was 77-60.
77-60.
Yeah. That was at that game. Did the radio. I think they got the score wrong on that one, but it was 77-60. They New Madrid had a 30-something point lead, and just kind of cruised to the end. Malden, I will say this: Malden fought to the end. Mm-hmm. I'm like, they were down big at half and came back and had some foul trouble in the first half. Came back in the second half, played hard, and cut into that, and just kept cutting into that lead. Cut it down to 15 at one point. They were down by as many as 32, and cut it down to 15 at one point. But I mean, they just playing a lot of freshmen. Playing a lot. I mean, there's no senior on the roster. I mean, it's just a tough deal for them. They're just looking for any kind of success at this point, but man, they play hard. And New Madrid's playing, they're missing a couple guys because of sickness. I think their school's been closed Thursday and Friday. I think they're going to miss that Nixa tournament. I think they're going to have to bow out of that because of sickness. I mean, it's just going around there, but they were still able to pull out that win and a win they needed because their schedule toughens up here coming down the stretch with a lot of SEMO conference games.
And we talked about teams that are in rebuilds and having like tougher games that you have to work with, but it's good to see that 2 teams that are kind of in the downs right now, like still putting in the fight.
Yeah, they. I mean, and New Madrid played hard as well. It's just, like I said, they were missing a couple of guys and had to have some guys in some different roles, but they still were able to. They played really well. The first quarter they scored 29 points, which is the best quarter they've had all year. Mm-hmm. They hit shots out. Hit some outside shots. They got the ball inside into the post, into Brooks, and really did a nice job getting the ball into the post, which is something they need to do because they've got 3 pretty good bigs in there. And, they were able to do what they wanted to do. And then as the game went on, Malden kind of made some adjustments. And again, they kept playing hard and New Madrid, once they got that big lead, they kind of put it on coast.
Next game I have on the list is Risco at Gideon 77-51.
Again, another expected outcome there. It's kind of what we thought would happen. They've got that firm hold on that Tri-County Conference right now. Between them and Gideon and Cooter, they're kind of a distant second at this point. So Risco's just doing what they need to do, just continuing to put up wins and I'm assuming just getting primed for this postseason.
Oh yeah, I think for Risco right now, that's pretty much their only focus is getting ready for postseason, seeing what competition they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, because I think it's a disappointment if they don't get out of districts at this point. I mean, I think you fully expect them to win that district, and if not, then that's something had to have happened. But I think they're definitely a top team there, and again, they're just taking care of their business. Yeah,
and then not going to put too much Team of Destiny labels on them, but at the same time, I feel like they're Final Four bound. But that's just me.
I hope so. Coach Blankenship has earned that. I mean, he's been there a long time and has had some really good teams. That ran into some really, really good teams. So hopefully he's able to get them over the hump this year.
Next game on the list, where record does not mean anything anymore, East Prairie at Twin Rivers, 69-31.
Yeah, I mean, again, East Prairie is just taking care of business. I mean, they're just they're going out and they're kind of flying under the radar right now. Ever since the Christmas tournament, nobody's really talking about them. They've lost a couple of games there, and they did lose to Scott City but that was a tough game. They've got the Scott Miss tournament that starts Saturday, and they're the 2 seed there. Kind of primed for that rematch against Scott City. And again, they're just taking care of their business and going about it just kind of under the radar. But they're a very good basketball team.
Yeah, barring no upsets, I think East Prairie is ready to see Scott City again
Yeah.
Any predicted outcome on how that game might go if it happens?
I would favor Scott City just because it's going to be at Scott City, and they're tough to win there, but tough to beat there. But at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me to see this East Prairie team win that game, win that tournament. It's just one of those things where just two good teams are going to go at it, and we'll see who comes out ahead. But I think they match up really well. They did the first time. I mean, really, the whole difference in the first game, Scott City jumped out to a 10-0 lead, and East Prairie seemed to be playing catch-up the entire game. East Prairie's got to get off to a better start, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think East Prairie's better when they have that kind of buffer, but when they have to play that hard just to, eke back into a tie game, which they did do in that game, you're probably gassed at that point by the time you get into the fourth, though.
Yeah, sometimes, and you see it even more in football, but a lot of times in basketball, too, whenever you fall behind, it's just that it takes so much effort just to get back to the end of the game and get back, to even, then that's kind of, you kind of waste all your bullets right there, and you don't have enough left. So, for them, it's very important to get off to a good start if they do play in that championship game. And they'll have a tough matchup in the semifinal, probably against Chaffee. I mean, Chaffee's a pretty decent team. Chaffee lost to Leopold. I mean, and I also found out about Leopold, what happened in that game. Rusty Hendricks, our friend at ESPN Sports, was talking to me and said that they were, I guess, down to 6 players, had some sickness there. And that's kind of, I guess, why he was holding the ball. I mean, in that case, I don't know why you wouldn't just cancel the game. It doesn't really change my opinion much of, Richland being better than Leopold, but I didn't want to put that out there that apparently that was kind of what everybody's been saying is they were missing some of their better players and we're down to just only had 6 people, and that's why he was holding the ball. But, at that point, I think you just cancel the game, wouldn't you? I mean,
you would think. I mean, it's hard to gauge. And hey, we're just two guys in front of a microphone.
I don't know. I do know that he and Coach Klein got into Coach Lincoln and Coach Klein got into it in that game, and that there were some. I don't think Coach Klein was happy with the holding the ball situation. So, but anyway, I just wanted to share that information that I had from that game.
That offers some clarity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on, I've got Kennett at Poplar Bluff finished that game 72-65.
I believe you had that. I will let you take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I didn't get to watch this game personally, but just judging off that score, I'm going to trust my gut feelings every now and then because I don't know what it was about it, but when I saw that game just on our schedule, I was like, hey, I've got some faith in Kennett. I think they can do it. And hey, prove me right.
There you go. Apparently for Poplar Bluff, Sammy Durden got hurt in warmups.
Didn't think that was going to happen.
Yeah, probably didn't have that on your bingo card, but yet it worked out for you. And then in the fourth quarter, his brother Brendan Durden, he apparently got hurt in the fourth quarter and had to be carried off the court. Did you have that one on your bingo card?
No, didn't have that either.
It's just a tough night for the Durdens. I think Coach Durden stubbed his toe on the way out of the locker room. I mean, I think it was just a tough night for the Durdens and a tough loss for Poplar Bluff, but good for Kennett. That's their second SEMO conference win, and I think if you had told them when the year started you're going to have 2 SEMO conference wins, I think they would have taken it and ran with it. I really do. And they've got a winnable game against Dexter coming up. Later on. I mean that's not a guarantee that Dexter's going to win that game. I think that'll be a pretty good matchup. So good for Kennett. Dyson Watson had 23. So he started scoring again. I think Gilmore had 18 or 19. So a great game from Kennett and a great win.
Yeah, and I think for Kennett, like this year especially, and I think we've said this like even back from the SEMO conferences, like you got to take what happened last year, what your record was last year, coming into this year with a new coach, figuring everything out, everything like that. Do you think Kennett should be impressed with themselves of just how they kind of done?
I think they should be happy. I don't know about impressed, but I think they should definitely be happy because they are they are much better than they were last year. They're I think 6-11. I think so. That's an improvement. And it's not where you want to be, but it's definitely an improvement over last year. Just the eye test tells you it's a much better team than it was last year. Playing together, I think Coach McBroom's done a great job with them, and hopefully they can continue to build. I know Watson being a senior, they'll lose him next year, and that'll be tough, but a tough person to replace. But hopefully they can just continue to build and get that program back to where it was a few years ago.
Moving on, let's talk about Scott City at Scott County Central, 69-28.
Another team just taking care of business. Scott City is very good, and we've said it all year. And Scott Central is not the Scott Central of old, and they're just they're they do their best, but it's just a school that's lost a lot of enrollment, and a school that just whenever you're that small, your margin for error is very slim, and they don't have Otto Porter walking through those hallways, and that's always a tough thing.
Listen, for small schools, especially, and you got to feel for them, especially when you get into this kind of position. It's either feast or famine, and that's the way it flows. When you're a small school and you're dealing with like your talent pool of what it is. Sometimes you end up in these situations where it's just you're going to be down for a while. Yeah,
the run that Scott Central was on, 70s, 80s, early 90s, I'm like, that you're just not going to see that again. I mean, it's just not going to happen. You would love for it to, but, things change. You had a lot of smaller schools that were much better at basketball then than they are now, and I don't know why that's changed. I mean, there's not a lot to do in these communities, so you'd think that would be all that they would be doing is playing basketball, but it's not. And these smaller schools, you don't see the long extended runs like you used to do, and it's unfortunate because I know Scott Central has built their reputation on basketball. And I want to see them good again, but it's just unfortunately it's just not going to be this year.
I guess to gauge that question, any up and coming small school do you think is going to make like that? I don't want to say dynasty run, but start to form that.
I don't know. I just don't see a small school that just is just going to have that long extended success. I just don't. I'm like, Richland has gotten, they were down for many, many years. They're kind of up now, but how long will that last? Will that last, 3-4 years, or is it just going to drop back down? Risco, they're kind of up and down here, and I mean they have some really, really good teams, and then you kind of have to rebuild a little bit. You're down for a year or two, then you build it back up, and I think there's just, there's none that jump out to me.
Yeah, well, I would say like over the past couple of years, of course, New Madrid was one of those teams that had about 4 years of dominance going through it, and then now they're kind of in that fluctuating period of just like they lost a lot of their weapons and they have to rebuild. And I think a down year for them is that's whatever, but I think that's the closest thing we have to a dynasty right now. But I'm thinking about like Charleston too in the past.
I was thinking more like small 1A schools or small little Class 1 schools.
So even just smaller, yeah.
I was just thinking the real small schools, but but even in the bigger schools, I mean the run that Charleston was on for all those years. It's hard to match now. Granted, they've got 14 straight district titles, and there's a chance that they're going to get a 15th this year. So that streak may not slip. So I mean, they are definitely a dynasty. So for them, they are definitely a team that's to be talked about. And but as far as the smaller Class 1 schools, I think it's just really hard to sustain that success year after year after year.
Yeah, and I think that's, like I said, I think that's all credit to just like what's your talent look like, and that's hard. It's hard to do.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on. Notre Dame at Jackson, 45-60.
Jackson, it was kind of a get-right game for them. Koldeck, I think he had 23, but they just Notre Dame just couldn't do anything with Jackson's defense. Jackson picked up the defense and really turned it on. I don't think Dohan really got going at all. They had to kind of rely on some outside shooting, and we've seen it with teams all year. When you rely on outside shooting and that's your main source of offense, especially at the high school level, typically that's not going to end well for you.
Unless you're shooting over 50%. I mean,
right, and against a team that's going to get after you and guard like Jackson, it's just not easy to get those shots off. You're rushing your shots, and it just is just not work typically. I mean, that's why you've got to be. That's why I'm always on with Dexter. Like, stop, don't shoot so many threes. Try to get to the rim. It'll open it up that outside and make it a little bit easier for you to hit some of those outside shots. But and Notre Dame plays very similar to Dexter as far as that goes. And they just weren't able to get anything going. Jackson again, just they're a good team. They just turned it on and fixed things that that were kind of not there against Cape Central as far as defensively.
Yeah, I think as far as that, like you said, just those adjustments you have to make. But I was thinking this is a much better tempo for Jackson to play than against Cape. I think Cape had a lot of athleticism that they had to deal with, and Notre Dame I feel like is a much slower pace. Like you said, shooting threes from the outside. Once you can lock that down, I mean Notre Dame doesn't really have that much to work with. So. Yeah, I mean, Jackson's still Jackson. They're still pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's talk about the Stoddard County games that happened on Tuesday night. Bell City at Woodland, 56-82.
Again, I've been on this Woodland train. I'm not going to jump off of it yet. They took care of business, put that game away early, and and kind of coasted to the end and, set up that matchup with Bernie, which could be a fun game on Thursday night. So, that's kind of what we expected.
Yeah, and I think there was one moment in this game where I was like, Woodland went out to maybe like an 18-point lead, something like that. I can't remember exactly. And then that margin really grew pretty thin. Mm-hmm. And I had a moment where I was a little bit worried. I was like, wait a minute. This isn't how this game's supposed to go. Of course, Woodland got back onto it. Kinder is a monster.
Yeah, he's really good.
Even getting hurt in the second half, having to do like a quick concussion test on him, everything like that. And then to come back in and not miss a step and just keep performing the way he's performing, he is just incredible.
Yeah, he's tough to stop. And he's a really good player. And, he's one of those guys that, there's just nobody on any of these other teams in the Stoddard County Conference that I think can match up with him. I just really don't. His style of play and his athleticism, the way he plays, is just tough to match up against. And good luck if you're trying to stop him.
Yeah, and I think as far as this game as a whole goes, 56-82. I think that's a pretty decent score. It's what I expected to be. But at the same time, Bell City's moving in that consolation bracket, and now Richland, might have some competition there if things don't swing their way.
Oh, absolutely. Because Bell City's going to get Bloomfield, and they could very easily win that game. Mm-hmm. That game will happen, after we, record this podcast. But that wouldn't shock me at all. I'm very impressed with both Bloomfield and Bell City is what they've kind of how they kind of play. They play hard. They don't have the greatest talent in the world, but their coaches kind of put it together. Coach Bixler does a nice job at Bell City. We've sung Coach Sindel's praises all year. Mm-hmm. Both of them deserve credit for getting their teams to play as well as they do, because there's not a ton of talent on those teams, but they play hard. They it seems like they listen to their coaches and try to execute the game plans that their coaches put out there. But sometimes the other team's just better.
Yeah. And sometimes that's just how it happens. Yeah. But let's go ahead and talk about Bloomfield and Bernie then too, because ended that game 42-60.
Yeah. Again, I thought Bernie, kind of what I expected to happen. Bernie, I just didn't think Bloomfield could score enough to match up with Bernie. Mm-hmm. And Bernie played well, and they're ready to go for that Woodland game. So I think it was just kind of what I expected in that one. Which
I think the good thing for Bernie in this game, especially, was that they kind of got to mix up their offense a little bit. Aycock did not get as many touches as he wanted during this game, but at the same time, it's like, well, we know that this wasn't the same game as the last time Bernie matched up with Bloomfield. Right. Mm-hmm. 3 points were made. A lot of 3 points were made. And I think that might be the difference. Do I think they can beat Woodland? I would be shocked if they did, but
yeah, they're going to give them a game. Yeah. I'll say that. I think Coach Long will have something schemed up ready for Woodland. Now, again, sometimes I just think the other team's just better. And in this case, I just think Woodland is just a better team. Doesn't mean I don't think Bernie can make this a game and put a scare in them. And hey, if that thing gets close late, and Woodland's not played a ton of close games this year, you never know what happens. Mm-hmm. We saw Bernie against Dexter. If they come out and play like that and just keep fighting and keep getting after them, and just give yourself a chance in that fourth quarter and see what happens. So I'm like, would it shock me to see a Bernie win in that game? No, it certainly wouldn't. But I think I think the definite favorite there is Woodland.
Yeah, and I think for Bernie at this point, defensively, kind of monsters. And what I think Woodland's probably going to do, what Bloomfield probably should have done, is try to foul out Aycock early.
Yeah, and it's going to be a lot tougher defensive assignments against Woodland than it is against Bloomfield.
Yeah, you don't have guys on Woodland that are like hitting well into 6 foot or over that, but not like 6'5", 6'6", anything like that. You're kind of dealing with okay height, but not the greatest. But at the same time, that's much more than you've been dealing with.
Yeah, they're just tough to deal with. They can score off the dribble. They've got multiple guys that can score. You're not kind of having just to focus in on one, making the rest of the team beat you. I'm like, it's going to be a tough assignment for them defensively to stop this Woodland offense, and but it's going to be a tough assignment for anybody in the conference tournament to stop this Woodland offense.
All right, do you want to move on to top 10?
Sure.
All right, my number one, I've taken Woodland.
Mine as well. I mean, that's again,
All for the reasons that we've just stated.
I have been on that train all year. I'm not going to jump off of it until they lose.
And we've seen them play on broadcast too, so that we have no excuse not to think the way we've thought about it all year so far.
Yeah, I got on them. I was on them when the season started, and like I said, I'm going to stay on that train for a while now.
I'm going to guess your number 2. Is it Scott City?
It is. I mean, Scott City played Woodland close, and that was a great game. I want to see it again in the district championship game. But I think those two match up very well, and obviously they're my number 2.
My number 3, I've taken Campbell.
I'm going to stick with Puxico. I still was not impressed with the way they played against Dexter last week. But again, I really am trying not to put too much stock into one game, just because you don't know who's sick, who's not. And so I went ahead and stuck Puxico as my 3rd.
Which I've got them as number 4. I just think Campbell's on a roll right now. They're looking great. It would take a pretty dominant loss for me to change my opinion about them, and I don't foresee that happening anytime soon. Yeah. So
I've got Risco as my 4. It's just kind of my top 4 I've had the last few weeks, and I'm going to stick with them. And just because they're just playing well. I mean, it's not their fault. They're playing part of their schedule that's just they're kind of just blowing through right now. But I still think they're a very, very good basketball team. Which
is why I've taken them as number 5. And to your credit, we pretty much had the same top 4 at least, pretty consistently. So this has been my one mix-up. But like you said, Risco, they just haven't played that many games that have really pushed them ahead. But at the same time, they're very consistent, very good.
And my number 5 is Campbell. So I've we just got them just a little bit different, or same top 5s, but and for everything that you said, they're rolling right now, and they're just I wouldn't want to play them if I was one of those Boot Hill Conference teams.
My number 6, I've taken Hayti.
My number 6, I took East Prairie, and the only reason I took East Prairie is because they beat Hayti earlier in the year, because they were like right there. I couldn't figure out who I was going to pick there. East Prairie, they're both playing very well right now, but I went ahead and took East Prairie.
Which I think is interesting, just because I agree with your point, but at the same time, I think I made this claim before. I think wins degrade over time.
Yeah, and they do. But when it's head to head, and I'm just trying to figure out, and they're both playing so well right now, I just think, well, the first time they played, they matched up, and East Prairie beat them 15. So I'm going to go. That's just my. But I do agree, wins degrade over time, which is why I've got Campbell ahead of Hayti.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, like all these teams have had great wins so far, so it gets harder and harder to determine where they're at when they're 30-point blowouts. Mm-hmm. My number 7, I've taken Charleston.
My number 7, I've got Hayti. Again, they were right there with East Prairie. Couldn't decide between the two, and so I've slid them in there. They're playing well, and there's nothing they've done wrong. I just thought, again, East Prairie beat them earlier in the year, and it's just that's just all I had to really go on, because I had them right there even with East Prairie. And
I've taken Charleston as number 7 just because I know the tough games that they're playing, and I know what monsters they're probably going to be in postseason, and so I'm keeping them at number 7 just because I feel like that's my position for teams that are like frisky and fun.
Yeah.
My number 8, I've taken South Pemiscot.
My number 8, I took Charleston for a lot of the reasons you said. Their schedule is brutal. They lost to Hazelwood Central on Tuesday night. I think they've got some sickness there. They've closed school for the rest of the week, if I'm not mistaken, or have had school closed, or I just know there's some sickness going on there. So you don't know. I didn't get a chance to watch that game, see who they had, who they didn't. But all I know is Hazelwood Central is a good team, very athletic, and they took them down to the wire. So you're right. They play a tough schedule, and they're very good, and that's why I've got them at 8.
And I'm taking South Pemiscot at number 8 just because, they're still very good. You could probably say like Campbell, Hayti, and South Pemiscot are all just right there with each other.
Yeah, I agree.
And so it gets hard because I need to have them on my list somewhere. But, if these teams played each other again,
yeah,
it would change positions so quickly.
Right. It would completely flip my top 10. I mean, when they play. And so, I don't know. It's just one of those that it's really tough picking this top 10 for sure.
And my number 9, I've taken East Prairie.
My number 9, I took Crothersville. They're still playing well. They had the one slip up against South Pem. They are another team that's got some flu going around, have had some games canceled. But they're still a very good basketball team. And, again, like you said, you can throw Campbell and Hayti, Crothersville and South Penn, throw them in a big hat and draw them out. And when they play each other night after night, you never know who's going to beat the other. So it's kind of tough to put them into a poll. But right now I got them at 9.
And then my number 10, I've taken Crothersville pretty much for the same reasons.
And my number 10, I took South Penn. And again, South Penn was really even with Crothersville. Crothersville beat them earlier just a couple weeks ago. So I went ahead and took Crothersville. But I mean, again, there's no right answer. They're all good teams. They're all deserving of being ranked. And it's just tough finding a slot for them in this top 10.
Yeah. And, as the season gets further and these games get more and more competitive, especially like when you have to look at box scores of how they're competing against teams that they might end up playing mutually, and that's how you have to gauge a couple of these teams, it gets harder and harder.
Yeah, and a lot of it is matchups between these teams. I mean, one team will match up better against one than they will another, and it's just tough. And so, I mean, it's just, like I said, really tough when you have to slot these into a top 10. That's why my top 10 looks different every week, because it's just like I'm like, well, this week they look pretty good. They look pretty. I mean, it's just tough.
Well, the amount of times I have to take a pen and mark out one team and put them in another place and be like, well, no, they'd have to go there.
Yeah, I've got a notebook here and I've got just stuff just marked out and different, about 4 or 5 different polls before I finally come up with this one. And half the time, whenever I sit down here and we start recording this, I'm thinking about changing them again. So yeah, I mean, it changes minute to minute, not just week to week.
Any teams that you would say would be receiving votes but didn't make the top 10?
Not this week. I got my top 10, and Richland obviously fell out. Zenith kind of moved back a little bit. I'm pretty happy with these top 10. I really didn't. Bernie was another team that I kind of looked at a little bit, but I just don't think Bernie against these other teams. I think these other teams are just a little bit better.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. I'd say for me, my receiving votes, like you said, Zenith, Bernie, those would be mine. But I obviously Zenith can compete with these teams.
Yeah, they just got to get a win.
They just got to get a win. Mm-hmm. All right, probably an easier list. Let's do classes 4 through 6.
Well, I've got Sykeston back as number 1 in my large school.
Same.
And then I've got Cape Central at 2 and Jackson 3.
Yep. And
then Notre Dame 4. I'm looking at you.
I took Kennett for number 5.
I took Dexter as number 5. Still, I mean, Dexter just beat a state-ranked team. Granted, it's a Class 1 state-ranked team, but they were state-ranked nonetheless. Kennett beat a hobbled Poplar Bluff team, which, still, they beat them. But I don't know. I was just, they're real close. And if they were to play tomorrow, I don't know, I'll probably pick Kennett. But today I'm taking Dexter as my 5.
Which I think is completely understandable. I'll eat crow and I'll say, hey, Dexter, when you can play, you play very well. I need to see it more.
Yeah, the thing
I just need to see that energy, that gameplay more.
Yeah, absolutely. If they play like that, like they played against Richland, if they play with that energy and that level of, just getting the ball inside, just being able to score inside, being, not just settling for 3-point shots, not turning the ball over a ton. If they play that way, they're probably number 4 on my list. I mean, because I think they can beat, if they play like that, that's a team that can beat Notre Dame in the district tournament. It's just they don't play like that all the time, and it's just kind of an up or down. And again, they're young; they're still kind of figuring this thing out. And I understand it. It's just that team that played Richland is number 4 on my list, but I got them at number 5 today just because they've had some other games.
And I'm taking Kennett just because. I'm going to gloat about myself and my prediction.
And you should, because that's a heck of a prediction, because I don't think many people were going to take that, would have taken Kennett there.
And, to your point, you're right. I want to see Dexter succeed. And, against that Richland team, even if there was some whatever things happen in that game, they practice for that game. I've had people tell me that. It's like, what are you going to work on to beat Richland? They're just like, everything we do in this game, we have tried to hammer it home in our practices. So, it's a game they went into prepared. And if they can do that for every team, like you said, they may beat Notre Dame.
Yeah, and again, they've got Puxco coming up, and they shouldn't have to go too deep into the playbook to try to figure that out. They played them twice this year, and they should know what it's going to take to beat them too. So hopefully they come out ready and are fired up to play them.
Well, let's talk about these Wednesday games. Campbell and Clarkton has been canceled, so that didn't happen. The only other game I had marked down was Portageville and Malden, just because I think that's going to be more comparable. And then, go ahead.
I was just Malden needs to win.
Yeah.
I'm like, Portageville needs a win after getting taken it on the chin, but Malden needs a win, and they're at home. I hope they can get a win.
And then, tonight we've got Richland versus Advance and Bell City versus Bloomfield.
I mean, Richland, I would think would hopefully comes out and plays. If they play like they did against Dexter, it wouldn't shock me to see Advance win that game. I think Richland's going to come out and play well. And
you would hope so. You'd hope they're kind of angry right now.
Bloomfield, Bell City, I hope that's going to give us a good game, because there really hadn't been a really good, close down to the wire game yet in this tournament. So we hyped it up so much about what a good tournament this was going to be. We need to start seeing some of those type games, and hopefully this Bloomfield, Bell City is going to be the one to give it to us.
Yeah, at least something close. And I'm just going to say it, and I'm going to have to watch the score immediately as we get done with this podcast. Is I'm going to take Bell City.
Yeah.
I think it's a team that beat Richland at the in the Oran Championship. I think if they play their best game, they can obviously win consolation.
Yeah, and your gut's been pretty good lately, so I'll go with that.
And if Richland beats Advance and Bell City beats Bloomfield, I think that'd be a fun game to see for consolation championship.
Yeah, they played each other twice this year, and Richland has really struggled with Bell City, and they're probably going to see. Not going to probably, but they might see each other in districts. So. If be a fun game if it happens.
I'm telling you, man, that Bell City game that made Richland snake bitten for this season.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's the game that kind of everybody was like, oh, I didn't see that happening, and that's kind of been one of the shockers this year, and it's kind of definitely stuck with Richland. Whenever you talk about Richland this year, you always think, well, they lost to Bell City at Oran,
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Thursday. This game sounds really good. South Pemiscot at Scott City.
Yeah, this is a great game, measuring stick game for South Pemiscot to see, I've got them at 10 in my poll. I've got Scott City at 2. How do these two teams match up? And so we'll find out. That's it's going to be again Scott City gets to be at home, so that's advantage them. It's a long bus ride from South Pem to Scott City. But I want to see a good game, and I want to see how that one plays out for sure.
Yeah, and I think as far as like how this game's going to go, I think South Pemiscot's going to play the game fast. Typically, that's their modus operandi is, running down the court as fast as you can. For Scott City, seeing what they did against Cape, I think that's my only measuring stick for this game, is that sometimes they struggle with that a little bit, but I think it's more they struggle with their own when they have to play up tempo. Sometimes they miss shots that they shouldn't miss.
Scott City's size, I think, is going to play a big role in this, because they're bigger at pretty much every position, and significantly better or bigger in some positions. So I think that's going to play a big role. I think that height, South Pem's going to have to be able to get in there and rebound with them, because if Scott City's dominating that offensive glass, it's going to be a long night for South Pem.
And my opinion of this is only from one half of basketball that I saw that kind of I feel like lost that game against Cape Central was I feel like rebounding was one of Scott City's kind of weaker points. So
yeah, definitely against the Cape Central team that matches them size wise and probably out jumps them at every position. So
this could be a completely different game.
Yeah, this is a kind of a different because they've got a couple 6'6" inside that you're going to be tough for South Pem who barely has they're pretty much below 6 foot for the most part up and down their lineup. So it's just going to be a tough matchup for them size wise I've learned over the years you don't count out a team just because they're small, but
sure.
But they're gonna have to figure some things out to be able to rebound.
It's definitely a proving ground game, I would say, because
absolutely.
I've been wanting South Pemiscot to kind of prove it that they're as good as they were last year, things like that. But for Scott City, I want them to prove that they've been consistently able to take this number 2 spot in our top 10s.
Yeah, I've been wanting one of these teams to get out of the Blue Deal Conference, and let's see what they do here after Christmas. I want to, and just see what they do against one of these other teams, just to kind of help us gauge things a little bit better.
Let's talk about Stoddard County a little bit. Bernie versus Woodland.
I really think Bernie can make this a game. I just think Woodland's going to have too much in the end. I think that Coach Long's going to have some things schemed up, but at the end of the day, I think Woodland just has better players across the board, and I think they win this game and go and play for a championship. Now, if I wake up on Friday morning, and I'm actually doing the games on Thursday night for A-Corp. But if I wake up on Friday morning and I see Bernie in that championship game, that's not going to surprise me at all. I mean, it would not. It's not a shocker. I mean, but I think Woodland just has the better team.
And this game's been played before, and I don't remember what the exact final score was, but I think it was an 18-point differential, something like that.
Bernie played them close in the first half, and then Woodland pulled away in the second. And I can see something very similar in this game. I think it'll be a little bit closer than 18 points. I'm looking at like a 10, 12-point game where Bernie's in it to the end, and then is just that midway through that fourth quarter, they just can't make any headway. That's kind of what I'm kind of foreseeing. I could be wrong. And
I don't remember exactly what the situation was at the point of that Woodland game, but I don't know if they had Hobgood at that point either.
I do not believe so. So I mean, that's another big thing that they have him.
It's a benefit sometimes. That first half against Bloomfield, he really wasn't there that much. And so, it's an added benefit to have a guy that's pretty good. He can be good in those clutch situations. We've seen that, obviously. I don't know. Like you said, I hope it's closer. I know when Bernie pops off, when they play their guts out, they can beat a team outside their punching zone. So
yeah, I would think Bernie's going to get after him. I mean, Bernie, I do not doubt it. Bernie's going to get after him. But for some reason, you talk about your gut. For some reason, my gut has been telling me all year long that Woodland's a team to beat in this conference, and I'm going to stick with it until that train derails. Yeah, and it may be Thursday night.
I don't disagree with you. I think Woodland is too consistent on all fronts. They've got size, they've got players that can just play make when one goes out, and I don't know. Not a lot of teams in this area have that.
Yeah.
Moving on, Dexter versus Puxico, another just a game that we've seen twice this year.
Yeah. And, I said in the last pod that I thought Dexter could beat Puxico. I thought they should have beat them in the Christmas tournament. They probably should have beat them. I mean, you take away the last 3 minutes of the game, last week, they probably should have beat them. And in both of those games, I thought Dexter looked like they had the better team. Mm-hmm. And so I think that Dexter can beat them, and it wouldn't shock me to see them beat. But I'm going to take Puxico because I want to see that Puxico Woodland game.
Well, I think that's what everybody's kind of wanting. Oh, man, I don't know.
I mean,
I've got it in my head that I think Dexter could win this game.
If Dexter comes out and plays the way they did against Richland, I think they win this game. I really do. I think then you have the Dexter Woodland game in the championship, and I think Woodland wins that. But I think Woodland wins regardless of who they play. But this game, Puxico Dexter, I mean, they played 2 great games already this year. Mm-hmm. I mean, the second game wasn't a great game. It was a competitive game. First game I thought was a great game.
Yeah.
And I hope we see some of that. I hope there's a lot of energy in BEC. I just want to see a really good game, and we'll see. I know Puxico has kind of looked at Dexter like, what's going on here? We're better than they are. We're a lot better than they are. Why are people talking about us at the same level as Dexter? We're better than they are. But they beat them twice. We'll see. It's tough to beat a team 3 times. We'll see.
It is tough to beat a team 3 times, but I think at this point, if Puxico beats Dexter, you can just put that to bed.
Absolutely. I mean, it's close to being put to bed already because you beat them twice, and you beat them a third time. There's like a no question, it's not even a conversation.
I don't know. There's that lingering thing in the back of my head that says, hey, maybe Dexter will play like the absolute psychopaths they were against Richland.
When I first thought this tournament, I mean, whenever I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, it wouldn't shock me to see Dexter come out and win this tournament. I mean, it just really wouldn't. You're kind of depending on how it matched up. But, the seeds, I don't think have worked out because I don't think Dexter can beat a Woodland team. I just don't. I just think Woodland's got too much. And even if Dexter plays a really, really good game, I watched the game the first time they played each other, and I didn't think Dexter played terrible. It's just Woodland's just better. Mm-hmm. And, it's just tough. I mean, Dexter could have to really come up with something to try to get after him. But Puxico the same way. I mean, they're going to have to figure out some way to get some stops against Woodland. But this Puxico Dexter game, I think it could go either way. And I think this is what we've been talking about this tournament. I think this game, and I think even, like I said, Bernie, I think is going to play Woodland close. But I just, I think these are going to be 2 good games.
This is when it gets exciting.
Absolutely.
Lucky for us, hey, not to discredit the consolation bracket, but we don't really have to worry about being wrong about the consolation bracket. It's the consolation bracket.
Yeah, I don't. It's an afterthought, and you hate to say that, but it is. You've kind of. I mean, there won't be many people there for watching those. I think isn't the consolation championship like at 4:30 on Thursday,
something like that
in the afternoon. It's not exactly going to be a big crowd drawer. But for Richland, I think if you're Richland, you got to get right. I think you got to win this consolation and go get those 2 wins and finish this tournament 2-1. It's not the tournament that you won at that point, but at least you came out of here with 2 wins.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is consolation brackets are there for a reason. Take experience for what it is. You still need to play for postseason at that point.
Absolutely, and I don't think any of these teams are fired up to be playing in the consolation. But something tells me this Bloomfield Bell City, those 2 coaches are going to get those teams fired up and get them. They're going to be getting after it. I think that's going to be a good game, and I think whoever comes out of that game is just going to give probably Richland or whoever wins that Richland Advance game. They're going to give them everything they want and probably a lot more than they're bargaining for, because I just feel like those 2 coaches just get those kids just playing hard, and I think especially if it's Richland, you're just kind of like we don't want to be here. It's tough to get fired up for those games.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Well, by the time this episode airs, that matchup will already be settled.
Yeah, it'll be already be set. So we'll see.
All right, Dave, any final thoughts for the week?
No, just again, same as last week. Please, people, be healthy. I'm ready to see some basketball, and a lot of games still get canceled, and I personally want to stay healthy myself. So let's just everybody get healthy, and let's get into February and stretch run February. I mean, it's going to go fast in February, and so we'll see where it goes.
All right, we'll see what happens. All right, this has been the SEMO Sports Zone. Thanks for listening.